Enough ice to bury every city on Earth. Enough to reshape every coastline on Earth. Subway floods instantly. Monster storms fueled by warmer seas. Sea levels rise 200 feet. System shuts down completely. Largest human migration in history. We're annoyingly good at adapting. Not in 100 years, not 1,000, overnight. Right now, there is enough ice on this planet to bury every single city on Earth. Enough to reshape every coastline you've ever seen. And what if, just for a second, all of it melted? Not over 100 years, not over 1,000. Overnight. Stick around, because what happens next isn't just a disaster movie. It's physics, and it's terrifying. Let's talk numbers first, because they're insane. Antarctica alone holds about 90% of the world's fresh water, frozen solid. Add Greenland, Arctic, every mountain glacier on Earth, and you're looking at over 27 million cubic kilometers of ice. If you melted all of it at once, global sea levels wouldn't rise a few inches. They'd rise about 216 feet. Let that sink in. So picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning and the ocean outside your window looks off, higher, closer. Within the first few hours, low-lying coastlines everywhere start taking on water. Beaches vanish, boardwalks disappear underfoot. And this is just the beginning, because water this heavy doesn't stop rising in a day. Cities built practically at sea level don't stand a chance. Places like Miami, where the highest point in the whole metro area barely clears 40 feet, are among the first to go fully underwater. Streets become canals, ground floors become basements, and the people who once called it paradise are now watching it disappear from a rooftop. Now zoom out to a city like New York. The subway system, thousands of miles of tunnels running under the streets, floods almost instantly. The financial district, built on reclaimed land right at the water's edge, gets swallowed first. Within days, the skyline you know becomes a skyline of rooftops poking out of open water. Here's the part most people don't think about. It's not just famous coastal cities, it's the mega deltas. Places like Shanghai, Bangkok, and the entire Nile Delta sit on flat, low ground built for farming, not flood defense. When the water comes here, it doesn't just flood a few blocks, it swallows entire regions, home to hundreds of millions of people, almost all at once. But the flooding? That's actually the easy part to understand. Here's where it gets scary. All that fresh water dumping into a saltwater ocean messes with something called the ocean conveyor belt, the current system that moves warm and cold water around the entire planet. Flood it with fresh water, and that system can slow down or straight up shut off. When ocean currents stall out, weather doesn't just get worse, it gets unpredictable in ways we've genuinely never mapped. Some regions could plunge into brutal cold snaps, even as the planet overall keeps heating up. Others get slammed with monster storms that pull in more energy from warmer seas. Basically, the weather forecast becomes a coin flip. Here's the twist nobody expects. A planet drowning in water somehow runs short on drinking water. Nearly 70% of the world's fresh water was locked up in that ice. Rivers that depend on glacier melt for their year-round flow, like the ones feeding half of Asia, lose their source entirely. More ocean water, less usable water. That's the trade nobody signed up for. For animals built around ice, there's nowhere left to stand. Polar bears lose their hunting grounds completely. Seals lose their breeding platforms. Entire Arctic and Antarctic food chains, built over millions of years around frozen ground, collapse in what would be, geologically speaking, the blink of an eye. Now bring it back to your dinner table. Coastal farmland, some of the most fertile land on Earth, goes underwater and turns salty, which means it's done for years, maybe decades. Meanwhile, regions that relied on glacier-fed rivers for irrigation dry up. You end up with a food system getting squeezed from both directions at once. And just when you think it can't escalate further, it does. Beneath all that Arctic ice sits permafrost, packed with trapped methane, a greenhouse gas dozens of times more powerful than carbon dioxide. Melt the ice, expose the ground, and that gas starts leaking into the atmosphere. It's like the planet flipping on its own accelerator pedal. Here's the loop that scientists actually lose sleep over. White ice reflects sunlight back into space. Dark ocean water absorbs it instead. So the more ice disappears, the more heat the planet soaks up, which melts even more ice. It's a feedback loop with no brakes, and once it's rolling, it doesn't care how fast you want it to stop. So where do you go when your home is underwater? Hundreds of millions of people would need to move, inland, uphill, anywhere dry. We're talking about the largest human migration in recorded history, happening in a fraction of the time any government has ever planned for. Every road out of a coastal city becomes a lifeline. Now follow the money. The world's busiest ports, biggest airports, and major financial hubs are almost all built near coastlines, because that's where global trade has always flowed. Flood those, and you're not just losing buildings. You're breaking the supply chains that stock every store shelf on the planet. Global trade doesn't slow down. It stalls out. If you actually drew this out, entire countries would need new maps. Florida, most of it, gone. Bangladesh, one of the most densely populated nations on Earth, almost entirely underwater. Island nations in the Pacific wouldn't just shrink. Some of them would cease to exist. This isn't a redrawn coastline. It's a redrawn world. Okay, plot twist. Because it's not all bad news for everyone. Northern regions like parts of Canada, Russia, and Scandinavia could see farmland where there used to be permafrost. Arctic shipping routes that were locked in ice for all of human history would suddenly be open year-round, cutting shipping times between continents dramatically. Every disaster creates a new map of winners and losers. Here's the thing about humans. We're annoyingly good at adapting. Floating architecture, elevated cities, massive seawalls, managed retreat programs, these aren't science fiction. They're already being tested right now in places like the Netherlands and Indonesia. A disaster like this wouldn't be the end of civilization. It would just force the fastest redesign of it we've ever attempted. Now, here's some actual perspective. Earth has done this before, just never overnight. About 20,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose over 300 feet, but it took roughly 10,000 years. Real-world ice melt today, even at its fastest, plays out over centuries, not a single night. So why run the overnight version at all? Because it strips away the excuse of "we'll deal with it later" and shows you the full price tag up front. Back in the real world, we're not facing an overnight flood. We're facing a slow one. Global sea levels have already risen about 9 inches since 1900, and the pace is picking up. Coastal cities are sandbagging today, not in some far-off future. The overnight version is a thought experiment. The slow version is already showing up on your street. So, would an overnight meltdown end the world? No, but it would end the world as you know it. New coastlines, new borders, new winners, new losers, and a species forced to adapt faster than ever before. The real question isn't whether this could happen overnight. It's how fast the slow version is already moving, and whether we're paying attention. If this blew your mind, hit subscribe, because next time we're asking an even bigger what if. See you there.